Deep in the night, I was jolted awake by a sudden snore. Disoriented, I blinked in the darkness. The apartment was silent except for the lingering echo of that snore. I lived alone in this studio apartment. A chilling realization washed over me: there shouldn't be a man's snore. My mind, still foggy with sleep, struggled to grasp the impossible. Had I dreamed it? No, it had been too distinct, too real. A disturbing movie scene flashed into my mind: a man lurking under a woman's bed, silent and sinister. Panic began to prickle at the edges of my consciousness. Instinctively, I reached for my phone to call David, my boyfriend. We'd had a silly argument earlier, but this was different. I needed reassurance, a familiar voice. But then, a text message from Emily, my best friend, vibrated my screen, cutting through the rising fear like a shard of ice. Don't trust your boyfriend. He's going to kill you. My blood ran cold. Emily? Kill me? David? What was going on? The snore, thankfully, had ceased. But the silence now felt heavier, pregnant with unseen menace. With trembling fingers, I fumbled for the bedside lamp and flicked it on. The sudden burst of light illuminated the small room, revealing its mundane reality. My bed, a small desk cluttered with papers, a wardrobe, a kitchenette. Tucked into a corner, all exactly as they should be. No shadowy figures, no lurking strangers. Just my solitary space, bathed in the harsh glow of the lamp. Perhaps it was a dream, a vivid hallucination brought on by stress. I'd been burning the candle at both ends at work lately. Reluctantly, I attributed the snore to my overactive imagination and dragged myself to the bathroom. A splash of cold water on my face, a quick trip to the toilet, and I was back in bed, though I couldn't bring myself to switch off the light. The lingering echo of that snore, and now Emily's bizarre text, kept my nerves tightly wound. Just as I was beginning to drift back into a fragile slumber, the snore returned. This time, it was undeniable. Closer, louder, resonating in the small space like a guttural growl. It was unmistakably a man's snore, and it sounded like it was right beside me, practically in my ear. Terror, raw and visceral, seized me. My heart hammered against my ribs, threatening to burst. I bolted upright again, gasping for breath, and just as before, the snoring abruptly stopped. Frozen on the edge of the bed, I stared into the brightly lit room, my mind racing, piecing together fragments of fear and logic. The snore was real. It was close. And if I couldn't see anyone, then the source must be hidden. Under the bed. The horrifying movie scene resurfaced, now chillingly plausible. Adrenaline coursed through me, sharpening my senses. My first instinct was to call the police, to scream for help. But what would I say? "Officer, I think there's a ghost snoring under my bed?" They'd think I was insane. My eyes darted around the room, searching for something, anything, to defend myself. A pair of scissors lay on my desk. Pathetic, but better than nothing. I snatched them up, the cold metal strangely comforting in my clammy hand. Cautiously, I crept to the door and unlocked it, ensuring a quick escape route should the need arise. Then, inspiration struck. The extendable clothes drying rack. It was long, lightweight, and could serve as a makeshift probe, a barrier between me and whatever lurked beneath. I grabbed it from the corner and, armed with scissors in one hand and the drying rack in the other, I approached the bed. Taking a deep breath, I extended the rack and cautiously poked it under the bed, sweeping it back and forth, left and right. Nothing. No resistance, no telltale thump, just the soft rustle of dust bunnies being disturbed. A wave of relief washed over me, so potent it almost made my knees buckle. I was being ridiculous. It was just my imagination, fueled by stress and a late night horror movie. With a shaky sigh, I bent down and, with the tip of the drying rack, tentatively lifted the edge of the bed sheet that draped to the floor. Dust motes danced in the lamplight, swirling around the undisturbed layer of gray fluff that had accumulated under the bed. Nothing else. No shadowy figure, no hidden man, just dust and the cold, hard floor. I sagged against the bed frame, letting out a long, shuddering breath. It was all in my head. Thank God. I closed and locked the door, tossed the scissors and drying rack aside, and crawled back into bed, switching off the lamp this time. The silence was now blessedly ordinary, and the phantom snore remained blessedly absent. Just as sleep finally began to claim me, a voice, cold and mechanical, shattered the silence. Game start. Question 1, is she virtual? My eyes snapped open. What the hell? Had I imagined that too? Was I sleep-talking? Or was my smart speaker, the Tianmao genie perched on my bedside table, malfunctioning? Tianmao genie, shut up. I commanded, my voice hoarse with sleep and lingering fear. But the genie, usually so obedient, seemed deaf to my command. Its robotic voice continued, relentless and eerie in the quiet room. Question 2, is she female? I lunged for the speaker, snatching it from the table, desperate to silence it, to rip out its power cord. But the power button was unresponsive. It was frozen, stuck in its bizarre, unsettling game. Question 3, is she from Japanese anime? Question 4, is she from a novel? And on it went, the questions growing increasingly nonsensical, increasingly disturbing. This was no hallucination. This was no dream. And it connected, somehow, to the snoring, to the feeling of being watched, of being invaded. A horrifying conclusion began to form in my mind, a chilling certainty that sent ice water through my veins. This apartment wasn't empty. This room wasn't safe. There was something wrong here. Something unclean. For the first time in my life, I felt the icy grip of true, unadulterated terror. Fear, sharp and primal, overwhelmed every other thought. Run. That single word echoed in my brain, overriding all reason, all logic. I didn't stop to think, didn't stop to grab shoes, didn't even bother to change out of my thin nightgown. Wrapped only in the flimsy fabric, I bolted for the door, heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. My apartment was on the 25th floor. The elevator was probably still on the ground floor. The stairwell. The stairwell was a dark abyss, a terrifying unknown I couldn't bring myself to face. Calling the police directly seemed pointless now. How could I explain this? My hands shaking so violently I could barely grip the phone, I fumbled for my contacts and dialed Emily's number. Desperate, terrified, I needed someone, anyone, to believe me. She answered, but immediately hung up. A moment later, a text message arrived, "What's wrong?" I knew she might be busy, unable to talk freely. Typing with trembling fingers, I sent a frantic message, misspelling almost every word, ghost. House. Help. Come now. Save me. Even in my panicked state, I knew she'd understand. Just then, the elevator doors on my floor dinged open. Salvation. I scrambled out of my apartment and practically threw myself into the waiting car, jabbing the closed door button repeatedly. The door slid shut, then abruptly, inexplicably, opened again. The elevator car remained stubbornly still, doors wide open, revealing nothing. Just the empty hallway, dimly lit and silent. No one there. No one waiting. A fresh wave of icy fear washed over me. Had something prevented the doors from closing? With a shuddering breath, I pressed the closed door button again. This time, the doors obeyed, sliding shut, and the elevator began its descent, thankfully, without further incident. But the unease lingered, a cold knot in my stomach. On the 18th floor, the doors opened again. And again, the hallway was empty. But this time, the doors stayed open, refusing to close. The seconds stretched into an eternity. I hammered the closed door button, frantic, desperate, but the doors remained stubbornly ajar. There was only one explanation. Something was still trying to get in. Something unseen. The image of ghostly hands, pushing the doors open, flashed through my mind. I almost screamed. Panic clawed at my throat, choking off my breath. Should I run? Jump out of the elevator and risk the dark stairwell? Just as I was on the verge of a full-blown hysterical meltdown, the doors finally, abruptly, slammed shut. The elevator shuddered. Then continued its downward journey. I leaned against the cold metal wall, gasping for breath, convinced I was losing my mind. 16th floor. The doors opened again. But this time, there was someone there. A middle-aged woman, dressed in a garish red dress and adorned with too much jewelry, as if on her way to a clandestine rendezvous. Human. Definitely human. Relief, sharp and overwhelming, flooded through me. A lifeline. I practically stumbled backwards, flattening myself against the elevator wall, eager for her to enter, to break the suffocating isolation, to beg for help, for sanity. But the woman hesitated at the threshold, frowning into the elevator car, muttering to herself, late at night, and still so many people? She took a step back, her brow furrowed in annoyance. There's no one else here. I cried out, my voice trembling, desperate. It's just me. Please, help me. But she didn't seem to hear me, didn't even glance in my direction. She just stood there, frowning at the empty space beside me, until the elevator doors, with agonizing slowness, slid closed again, leaving me alone, utterly alone, with my terror. Then it hit me. She hadn't seen anyone else. She'd said so many people to the empty elevator. She hadn't seen them, but she had felt their presence. And they were still here. In the elevator with me. Invisible to the living, but terrifyingly real to me. The blood in my veins turned to ice. The elevator was filled with ghosts. I was trapped in a metal box, hurtling downwards, surrounded by unseen horrors. My back prickled with cold sweat. Frantically, I jabbed the button for the 9th floor. 9. 9. 9. I had to get out. Now. Huddling against the side of the elevator car, as far away from the unseen presences as possible, I stared at the floor indicator, each descending number a small victory, a step closer to escape. 9th floor. Ding. The door slid open and I practically leaped out, stumbling into the hallway, gasping for air, desperate to escape the ghostly confines of the elevator. As I stumbled out, I almost collided with a large, round man standing in the hallway, waiting for the elevator. Seeing the doors open, the portly man began to step inside. Don't. I screamed, my voice raw with terror. Don't go in there. There are ghosts in there. The man froze, blinking at me in surprise, his jowls wobbling slightly. He glanced from me to the empty elevator car, then back to me. A mixture of confusion and mild amusement on his face. But despite my frantic warning, he shrugged and stepped into the elevator. Immediately, a loud, insistent beep 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 filled the hallway. The unmistakable sound of an overloaded elevator. I knew that sound. It only happened when the elevator was carrying too much weight. But there was only the portly man inside. He might be overweight, but surely not enough to trigger the overload alarm? The man, looking bewildered and slightly annoyed, stepped back out of the elevator, muttering under his breath, well, that's just great. Living ghosts, probably. He looked at me again, a flicker of something, fear? In his eyes. Crazy building. Finally, a living, breathing human being. A wave of desperate hope surged through me. He was here. He'd seen the elevator malfunction. Maybe, just maybe, he'd believe me. I rushed towards him, grabbing his arm. Sir, please, you have to help me. Whoa there. The man yelped, jumping back as if I'd bitten him. His eyes widened in alarm, and he suddenly looked genuinely terrified. Before I could even stammer out a plea, he turned and sprinted towards his apartment door, fumbling with his keys. Wait. I cried, chasing after him. Please, just listen. But he didn't stop, didn't look back. He shoved his key into the lock, fumbled it, and then, with a triumphant click, burst into his apartment and slammed the door shut in my face. The lock clicked into place, solid and final. I pounded on the door, my fists hitting the solid wood in frantic desperation. Please. Help me. Just open the door. Please. My pleas echoed in the empty hallway, swallowed by the silence behind the closed door. He wasn't coming back. Just as despair threatened to engulf me, my phone buzzed again. Another text message. From Emily. Too late to come over, alone in the dark. Where's David? Despair turned to a cold, empty void. Even Emily didn't believe me. She probably thought I was having a breakdown, a hysterical overreaction to a bad dream. And David? David, my boyfriend, with whom I was currently in a petty, pointless Cold War. But in this terrifying, surreal night, pride and petty arguments seemed utterly insignificant. I needed him. Needed his strength, his reassurance, his presence. Forget pride. Forget waiting for him to call. I dialed David's number, my fingers still shaking. He answered on the third ring, but immediately hung up. Rage mixed with terror. Even now, even when I was clearly in some kind of distress, he was still being childish, still holding on to his anger. I sent a desperate text, David, please, come help me. I'm scared. Finally, he called back. His voice, usually calm and steady, was laced with concern. Sarah? What's wrong? Are you okay? David, you have to come here. I'm so scared. My voice broke, tears welling up in my eyes. David's tone softened, becoming soothing, reassuring. Hey, calm down. There's no such thing as ghosts, Sarah. You're just freaking yourself out. It's okay. I'm coming, okay? I'm on my way. Just find somewhere safe to hide, alright? How long? I choked out, my voice trembling. How long will it take you? About an hour, maybe? I'm pretty far away. An hour? My voice rose in pitch, bordering on hysteria. An hour? I'll be dead from fright in an hour. Okay, I'll call the police then, alright? Just stay on the phone, okay? And try to calm down. I'll call them now. The line went dead. David's voice, his fleeting reassurance, vanished, leaving me alone again in the echoing hallway, swallowed by the silence, by the creeping dread. Wait a minute. Something David had said, it didn't make sense. There's no such thing as ghosts, Sarah. Why had he said that? I hadn't told him I thought I'd seen a ghost. I'd just said I was scared. A chilling thought snaked its way into my mind, cold and insidious. What if this wasn't a ghost at all? What if this whole terrifying night, the snoring, the speaker malfunction, the elevator doors, was all a prank? A cruel, elaborate, deeply disturbing prank orchestrated by David? He was a computer whiz, a tech genius. He'd boasted about hacking into secure websites, about manipulating complex systems. Could he have remotely messed with my smart speaker? Could he have somehow caused the elevator malfunctions? It seemed plausible. Disturbingly plausible. The thought, once planted, took root and blossomed into a burning anger. He'd scared me half to death. He'd deliberately terrified me, for what? For revenge? To punish me for a stupid argument? The sheer audacity of it. Just then, my phone rang again. David. I answered, rage bubbling up inside me, ready to explode. You are unbelievable. I spat into the phone, my voice trembling with fury. Are you sick in the head? We have a fight, so you decide to scare me like this? Are you insane? I pictured him on the other end of the line, smugly smirking, basking in the success of his twisted prank. My anger intensified. But his voice, when he spoke, was confused, genuinely bewildered. Sarah? What are you talking about? What did I do now? My smart speaker, the elevator, was that you? Was this all some kind of sick joke? What? No. Sarah, calm down. What are you even saying? Joke? No. I'm not. I called the police, okay? They'll be there in 10 minutes. Just try to stay calm. His voice was laced with genuine confusion, bordering on frustration. He'd actually called the police? If this was all a prank, a twisted revenge scheme, why would he call the police? That didn't make any sense. Confusion warred with anger and lingering terror. Hesitantly, I hung up, my hands still trembling. Then, on impulse, I dialed 911. I needed to know if he was telling the truth. 911, what's your emergency? Hello, I stammered, my voice still shaky. Did you just receive a call about an incident at the Green Oasis apartment complex? Yes, ma'am, I did. Just a moment. Green Oasis, Building 6, Apartment 2503, female tenant reporting a possible emergency? My apartment. Female tenant. Me. Yes. That's me. Please, you need to come quickly. Units are already en route, ma'am. ETA is approximately 10 minutes. Please stay on the line, and try to find a safe place to wait. Do you require immediate assistance? He had called the police. He hadn't been lying. Which meant this wasn't a prank. This was real. The ghosts, the snoring, the malfunctioning technology, it was all real. Terror, cold and suffocating, surged back, stronger than ever. The police were coming, but in 10 agonizing minutes. 10 minutes trapped in this haunted building, with whatever was in my apartment, whatever was in the elevator. Where could I hide? The portly man's door remained stubbornly shut. The opposite apartment was dark, silent. Probably empty. I had to get out of this hallway. I had to try another floor. The stairwell still seemed like a terrifying abyss. The elevator, despite its ghostly passengers, offered the illusion of light, of safety. Reluctantly, I pressed the up button. The elevator doors slid open. Empty. Mercifully empty. Swallowing hard, I closed my eyes and stepped back into the metal box, my heart pounding in my ears. Only when the door slid shut, sealing me in, did I dare to open my eyes again. The elevator car remained blessedly ordinary. No strange noises, no sudden malfunctions, no chilling sense of unseen presence. A sliver of relief pierced through the terror. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe the ghosts had left. Maybe I was finally safe. Hesitantly, I pressed the button for the ground floor. The lobby, the security guard's booth. That would be the safest place to wait for the police. The elevator descended smoothly, uneventfully. When the doors opened on the ground floor, I practically stumbled out, eager to escape the haunted metal box and breathe fresh air. The lobby was deserted, dimly lit and eerily silent. The usual nighttime security guard was nowhere to be seen. The front doors were locked, the building sealed off for the night. The outside world, visible through the glass doors, was equally quiet and dark, punctuated by the scattered pools of streetlights. I started walking towards the front entrance, my bare feet padding softly on the polished floor. As I walked, a strange calm began to settle over me. I'd been outside my apartment, in the hallway, in the elevator, in the lobby, and nothing had attacked me. No ghostly hands had reached out, no unseen force had harmed me. Maybe the ghosts in my apartment, in the elevator, weren't malevolent. Maybe they were just there. Present, unsettling, but not actively harmful. The fear, while still present, began to recede, replaced by a strange sort of weary resignation. If this was my reality now, living in a haunted apartment building, maybe I could learn to live with it. As the immediate terror subsided, other, more rational thoughts began to surface. David. Why had David known about the ghosts? I'd only told Emily about the snoring, about the strange happenings. How could David know unless they were in contact? Unless. A cold, sickening realization dawned on me. David and Emily. Together. Behind my back. All this time. Late at night. Why else would they be in contact at this hour? Why else would they be keeping secrets? No wonder David had been so quick to dismiss my fears, so eager to calm me down. He was probably trying to distract me, to keep me from realizing the truth. No wonder he'd been angry yesterday, over nothing. He'd been feeling guilty. He'd been trying to pick a fight, to create distance between us, to justify his betrayal. My phone buzzed again. David. Again. I answered, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. What do you want, David? Sarah? Are you okay? Are you safe? The police are on their way. What's happening? His voice was still laced with concern, still trying to play the concerned boyfriend. But now, I saw through his facade. I didn't answer his questions. Instead, I asked the question that was burning in my mind, the question that had suddenly become more terrifying than any ghost. How did you know about the ghosts, David? I only told Emily. There was a beat of silence on the other end of the line. A beat too long, too telling. Then, David spoke, his voice strained, hesitant. Because Emily's phone card, it's with me. She's been dead for 2 months, Sarah. That's impossible. I gasped, stumbling back, my legs suddenly weak. I talked to her yesterday. I texted her just minutes ago. His words were absurd, unbelievable. I know it sounds crazy, David said, his voice heavy with what sounded like forced sorrow. It's all my fault, Sarah. Yours and Emily were like sisters. I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't want you to be devastated by her death, so I. Suddenly, my phone beeped again. A new text message. From an unknown number. The message preview scrolled across the top of my screen, cutting off David's words, freezing me in place, my blood turning to ice. I'm Emily. Don't trust David. He's going to kill you. Make it look like an accident. I stared at the message, my mind reeling, caught in a vortex of confusion and terror. Emily? But David said she was dead. Who was lying? Who was telling the truth? And why would David want to kill me? Without a word to David, I hung up the phone and, with trembling fingers, typed a reply to the unknown number. Why does he want to kill me? The reply came almost instantly. Life insurance. You're the insured. He's the beneficiary. David. Life insurance. Beneficiary. The words slammed into me like physical blows. Could it be true? Could David, the man I loved, the man I thought I knew, be capable of such cold-blooded betrayal? Of murder? For money? But then, Emily's death. 2 months ago. David's claim that she was dead. That seemed even more unbelievable, more impossible. Surely, I would have known. Surely, Emily wouldn't have been silent for 2 months. But the text messages, the phone call, it sounded like Emily. It felt like Emily. And the chilling message, it resonated with a terrifying plausibility. I made a decision. Ignoring the mounting dread, ignoring the rational part of my brain screaming that this was insane, I dialed the unknown number. The phone rang, once, twice, then clicked, and a voice, a familiar voice, answered. Emily? Is that you? I whispered, my voice barely audible. It's me. Listen to me, Sarah. David and I were roommates. It was his roommate who found the insurance policy. That's why I suspect David is planning something. You can't trust him. Don't believe anything he says. The voice was definitely Emily's. Slightly breathless, urgent, but unmistakably Emily. But he called the police, I stammered, my mind still struggling to process the impossible. If he's trying to hurt me, why would he call the police? There was a pause, a moment of silence on the other end of the line. Then Emily spoke again, her voice lower, more hesitant. I don't know. I don't know what he's planning. But please, Sarah, just don't trust him. Don't believe him. Get out of there. Take a taxi. Come to me. Please. Panic flared again, hot and sharp. My head spun, caught between conflicting realities, between ghostly whispers and chilling accusations. My phone buzzed again, multiple times in quick succession. Incoming calls. David. And another unknown number. Probably the police. Emily's words echoed in my ears, don't trust him. Don't believe him. Come to me. A desperate, reckless impulse seized me. Ignoring the calls from David and the unknown number, I hung up on Emily, and dialed David's number again. Rage, raw and visceral, surged through me, overriding all fear, all confusion. When he answered, I didn't give him a chance to speak. You monster! I screamed into the phone, my voice shaking with fury. You absolute monster! Sarah? What's wrong? The police are here. Are you okay? Where are you? David's voice was still carefully modulated, still playing the concerned boyfriend, but now, I heard something else beneath the surface. A tremor of fear? Guilt? I cut him off, refusing to listen to his lies. Where are the police? I don't see any police. You lied to me. You're a liar. A sick, twisted liar. I scanned the deserted lobby, the empty street outside. No flashing lights, no sirens, no sign of law enforcement. He had lied. He was trying to trick me. I slammed the phone shut, severing the connection, severing my last tie to him, to the life I thought I knew. Just as I was about to hurl my phone against the wall in frustration, another text message arrived. This time, from David. A link. The message preview, East Road major car accident, man and woman dead. Curiosity, morbid and irresistible, overcame my anger. With trembling fingers, I clicked the link. The webpage loaded, displaying a news article. 2 months old. The headline screamed of a horrific car crash on East Road. And then, the photos. Graphic, disturbing. And then, the victim's photos. 2 grainy, pixelated images. One of a man, the driver. And one of a woman. A woman with familiar dark hair, a familiar smile, a familiar face. Emily. The blood drained from my face. My knees buckled. I stumbled backwards, collapsing onto a nearby chair, the phone slipping from my numb fingers. The fear, the terror, returned, tenfold, crushing me, suffocating me. Emily. Dead. For 2 months. And the voice on the phone, the texts, who was it? What was it? No, this is fake, I whispered, my voice hoarse, disbelieving. This has to be fake. Desperate, frantic, I fumbled for my phone again, reopening the browser, typing in keywords, East Road car accident, 2 months ago, man and woman killed. The search results flooded the screen. News articles, police reports, online forums discussing the tragedy. It was real. The East Road car accident. 2 months ago. A man and a woman killed. I scrolled through the articles, reading the details, the dates, the descriptions. It all matched. It was real. Emily was dead. And I hadn't even known. I'd been so caught up in my own life, so oblivious to the world around me. I'd been in my hometown for a week, visiting my family, completely disconnected from everything, from everyone. Another text message. From Emily's number. Have you left yet? Come find me. A wave of nausea washed over me. Emily was dead. But someone, something, was texting me, calling me, pretending to be her. But why? Why was it pretending to be Emily? Why was it telling me to run, to distrust David? Why was it luring me away from the police, away from safety? And then, a chilling realization dawned on me. If Emily was dead, if the voice on the phone wasn't Emily, then who, or what, was it? A ghost? Emily's ghost? And if it was Emily's ghost, why was it calling? Why was it texting? Why was it luring me away? Was she lonely? Was she trying to take me with her? Was she trying to kill me, to drag me down to the underworld, to force me to join her in death? But David, what about David? Was he really trying to kill me? Was he really after the life insurance money? Or was he just trying to protect me? He had called the police. He had said they were on their way. But I hadn't seen them. And the voice on the phone, the voice claiming to be a police officer, it could have been David, faking it, playing another trick. I was trapped, caught in a web of lies and fear, with no idea who to trust, what to believe, or where to turn. Ghost or killer? Friend or foe? Reality or nightmare? I was lost in the dark, surrounded by unseen dangers, with no light to guide me, no safe haven to run to. And the night, I knew, was far from over. Paralyzed, I stood there, the chilling revelation swirling in my mind. Who to believe? David? Emily? Or neither? After a moment of agonizing indecision, I defaulted to my initial, flawed plan, the security booth. It was the only vaguely safe place I could think of. I sprinted towards the security office, my bare feet slapping against the cold tile floor, a desperate hope flickering within me. But as I reached the small, glass-walled enclosure, my heart sank. It was deserted. Empty chairs, a silent radio, a logbook lying open on the desk, but no security guard. This was wrong. It shouldn't be empty. The night guard at our complex was notoriously diligent, a creature of habit, religiously patrolling the grounds and manning his post. He would never abandon his station, not without a very good reason. But tonight, of all nights, he was gone. Vanished. Just like everything else was going wrong tonight. Just as another layer of unease settled upon me, my phone shrilled again. Emily. Hesitation warred with a desperate need for connection, for answers, even if they were laced with fear. Reluctantly, I answered. Emily's voice, breathless and panicked, rushed out of the speaker. Don't trust anyone you see, Sarah. Not even the police. Why? I stammered, my own voice mirroring her rising panic. Her frantic tone was infectious, tightening the knot of fear in my stomach. What's happening? I called David's roommate. Emily's voice trembled. He said David took out a huge loan. Sarah, I think he's planning to kill you for the money. Everyone you've seen tonight, they could all be in on it. Hired actors, part of his plan. The woman in the elevator, the portly man in the hallway, if they were actors, hired by David, it explained their bizarre behavior perfectly. It was a chillingly plausible scenario. But I couldn't fully commit to believing her, not yet. Doubt, a stubborn seed of reason, still lingered. Emily, I asked, my voice barely a whisper, tell me, are you alive? Or, are you a ghost? Silence. A long, drawn-out silence stretched across the line, punctuated only by the frantic thumping of my own heart. I could almost hear Emily's breath catching in her throat. Then, finally, a voice, tinged with confusion, whispered back, What do you mean? What are you talking about? The car accident, I said, the words catching in my throat. 2 months ago. East Road. A man and a woman, they died. The woman, it was you, Emily. Are you joking? Emily's voice rose in disbelief, then shifted to irritation. Sarah, I'm perfectly fine. I'm alive and breathing. If you don't believe me, let's video call. Before I could respond, the line went dead. A moment later, a video call request popped up on my screen. Emily. My breath hitched. Swallowing hard, I pressed accept. Emily's face filled the screen. She was wearing a simple t-shirt and pajamas, her face bare of makeup, her hair slightly disheveled, clearly just woken up. She looked normal. Tired, maybe, a little stressed, but undeniably alive. Too alive to be a ghost. Then, she angled the camera downwards, showing her full body. See? My feet are on the ground, right? She took a few steps back, revealing more of her surroundings, her bedroom. Ordinary and mundane. Then, she reached over and switched off a lamp, plunging half of her room into shadow. See? Shadow. A faint, but distinct shadow, stretched behind her on the wall. In countless movies and ghost stories, the telltale signs of a spirit were always the same: feet that didn't touch the ground, no reflection in mirrors, no shadow in the light. Looking at Emily, at her solid, grounded presence, at her shadow stretching across the wall, the last vestiges of doubt crumbled away. I had to believe her. She was alive. David's link, the news article, it had to be a fake. A cleverly constructed lie. And the news reports I'd found online. Maybe the accident had happened, but the victims weren't Emily and some random driver. Maybe David had just twisted the details, manipulated the information to fit his twisted narrative. It suddenly struck me how easily I had almost accepted the idea of Emily's death. I'd been so quick to believe the worst, so vulnerable to suggestion. And the news reports. Thinking back, I realized that while news outlets often reported on fatal car crashes, they rarely, if ever, published graphic photos of the victims. It was unusual, even suspicious, that David's link had included such details. Emily's voice broke through my frantic thoughts. Sarah, you're in danger. I don't know what David is planning, but you need to get out of there, now. Come to my place. It's the only safe place for you. Okay, I'm calling a cab right now, I said, my voice trembling with a mixture of relief and renewed fear. I'm on my way. I hung up, ended the video call, and bolted out of the deserted security booth, back into the dimly lit night. Fumbling with my phone, I opened the ride-hailing app and frantically requested a car, my eyes darting nervously around the empty parking lot, scanning the shadows for any sign of movement, any hint of danger. Waiting for the car felt like an eternity. Every rustle of leaves, every distant car horn, sent a jolt of fear through me. David could be anywhere. His hired thugs could be lurking in the shadows, waiting to pounce. Finally, a notification popped up: your ride has arrived. Relief washed over me, so potent it almost made me weak. A silver sedan pulled up to the curb, its headlights cutting through the darkness. I didn't hesitate. I wrenched open the back door and practically threw myself into the back seat. Safety. I was finally safe. Away from the haunted apartment, away from David's twisted games. I was in a moving car, heading towards Emily, towards safety, towards sanity. David couldn't reach me here. Reaching for my phone, I intended to message Emily, to let her know I was in the car, on my way. But just as I unlocked the screen, another text message popped up. From David. Just now. Emily contacted you, right? Think about it, Sarah. Have you ever actually seen a ghost? Do you even know what a real ghost is like? David's words hit me with the force of a physical blow. My fingers froze above the keyboard. He was right. I'd never seen a ghost. My entire understanding of ghosts, of the supernatural, was based on movies and books, on fictional portrayals. What if? What if real ghosts weren't what I imagined? What if they could walk on the ground? What if they did cast shadows? Just then, my phone rang. David again. Hesitantly, I answered. I was in a moving car now, speeding away from him. Even if he was trying to hurt me, he couldn't reach me now. Maybe it was safe to hear him out. Maybe there was another side to this story. The first sound I heard when I answered was a deep, ragged sigh. David's sigh. Then, silence stretched on, thick and heavy. David? I prompted, my voice barely above a whisper. What do you want to say? The sound of a lighter flicking, then a soft inhale, reached my ears. He was smoking. He only smoked when he was deeply stressed. Sarah, he finally spoke, his voice low, almost defeated, why don't you just come meet me? Let me explain everything. There are things I can't explain over the phone. Things you need to see for yourself. No way, I said, my voice hardening. Are you crazy? Do you think I'm stupid? You took out a life insurance policy on me. You're planning to kill me for the money, aren't you? You're going to make it look like an accident. Another long silence. Then, David's voice, flat, resigned. Yeah, okay. You're right. I did take out the insurance. You signed the papers, remember? You just forgot, didn't you? Memory flickered. A hazy recollection of a rushed signing of some documents, something about insurance, something David had mentioned. Something about helping his old friend. It had been months ago. I'd barely paid attention. It had seemed so insignificant at the time. But that doesn't prove anything, I said, my voice wavering slightly. It doesn't mean you're not trying to kill me. No, David said, his voice barely audible. I guess it doesn't. Then, his tone shifted, becoming softer, almost pleading. So, you're going to Emily's now? Yes, I said, my voice firm. I wasn't going to give him any information. But a part of me, a small, treacherous part, wanted to hear what he had to say, wanted to understand. Do you remember when we first started dating? David's voice was suddenly thick with emotion. He started talking about our early days, about our first dates, about silly inside jokes, about tender moments, about shared dreams. He painted a vivid picture of our relationship, of the love we had shared, the bond we had forged over 2 years. His voice cracked, he started to sob, and by the end of his monologue, tears were streaming down my own face. Sarah, he whispered, his voice choked with emotion, after everything, after all this time, do you still not trust me? The question hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Trust. Could I trust him? After everything that had happened tonight, after the terrifying events, the accusations, the revelations. Could I still find it in myself to believe him? The word yes almost escaped my lips. Almost. But then, a cold, hard voice of reason cut through the emotional fog. He was playing me. He was manipulating me. He was using our shared memories, our past love, to lure me back, to lower my guard, to make me vulnerable. It was a classic manipulation tactic. A carefully crafted emotional trap. No, I said, my voice cold and flat, cutting through his emotional plea. I'm not going to meet you, David. Don't waste your breath. If you called me just to try and trick me into meeting you, then just hang up now. What? David's voice was laced with genuine surprise, even disbelief. You still don't believe me? Listen to me, Sarah, you can't go to Emily's. Please, I'm begging you, don't go. The one who wants to hurt you. It's Emily. It's Emily who's trying to kill you. His desperate, pleading tone, so different from his earlier manipulative charm, gave me pause. Despite myself, despite all the evidence pointing to his guilt, a tiny seed of doubt began to sprout in my mind. He sounded genuinely scared. Genuinely desperate. And for some reason, his fear resonated with me, struck a chord of unease deep within my gut. Even knowing he was likely lying, I couldn't bring myself to hang up. David, I said, my voice trembling slightly, don't lie to me anymore. We're done. We're over. Just let me go. What? No. Sarah, no, don't say that. Please, just wait. Hold on. He hung up abruptly. Then, another video call request popped up. David. Hesitantly, I answered. David's face filled the screen again, but this time, he looked different. His eyes were red-rimmed, swollen with tears, his face pale and drawn, etched with exhaustion and despair. He looked broken. Looking at him, at his raw, unfiltered grief, it was almost impossible to reconcile this broken man with the cold-blooded killer Emily had described. Look, he said, his voice hoarse, his eyes pleading, I can prove it to you. I can destroy it. Will you believe me then? Just meet me at Chongning Food Street. Please, Sarah. Let me tell you everything. Some things are just too complicated to explain over the phone. He held up a document to the camera. The insurance policy. Clear as day, the stark black lettering against the white paper. He held it up for a long moment, letting me see it, letting me absorb the reality of it. Then, without hesitation, he ripped it in half. Then in half again. And again. Until it was nothing but scraps of paper. Not satisfied, he even took a lighter and set the fragments ablaze, watching them burn to ash in his trembling hands. My breath caught in my throat. He'd destroyed it. He'd burned the insurance policy. If he was planning to kill me for the money, why would he do that? Why would he destroy his motive? I bit my lip, my mind still reeling, my heart still torn between fear and a flicker of something else. Hope? Trust? A desperate longing to believe him? Okay, I whispered, my voice barely audible. Okay, I'll meet you. I agreed to meet him at Chongning Food Street because it was a public place, a bustling hub of activity even late at night. If David was planning something, he wouldn't risk it in a crowded, well-lit area. Or so I hoped. And there was something else, something deeper, something more fundamental driving my decision. He'd burned the policy. He'd spoken of our past, of our love. And despite all the fear, all the doubt, a part of me, a stubborn, irrational, deeply emotional part of me, still loved him. And I knew, deep down, that I needed to give him a chance to explain. I owed it to our past, to the love we had once shared. And maybe, just maybe, I owed it to myself. To find out the truth, whatever that truth might be. Even if it shattered my world. Even if it broke my heart. Because living in this limbo of fear and suspicion, this agonizing uncertainty, was worse than any truth, no matter how painful. I smiled, a sad, self-deprecating smile. Apparently, I was a creature of emotion after all. Chongning Food Street. But as my taxi pulled up to the entrance of the normally vibrant food street, a wave of unease washed over me. It was deserted. Eerily deserted. Normally, even at this late hour, the street would be teeming with people, the air thick with the aroma of street food, the sounds of laughter and chatter echoing off the surrounding buildings. But tonight, it was silent. Empty. Only a few scattered figures drifted through the gloom, their footsteps echoing in the unnatural quiet. It felt wrong. Menacing. Like walking into a trap. Panic flared again, sharp and suffocating. I wanted to tell the taxi driver to turn around, to take me back, anywhere but here. But then, through the dim light, I saw him. David. Sitting huddled on the ground just outside the entrance to the food street, his shoulders slumped, his head bowed, a picture of utter dejection. He looked frail. Weak. Like he was desperately ill. It had only been a day since I'd last seen him, but he looked like he'd aged years in that short span of time. What had happened to him? I hesitated, fear warring with a flicker of pity. I couldn't just leave him there. Not like this. Not without at least hearing what he had to say. Keeping my distance, I called out, my voice trembling slightly, David? David, it's me. I'm here. He didn't react. Didn't move. Didn't even seem to hear me. I called out again, louder this time, waving my hand in the air. Still nothing. He remained slumped on the ground, unresponsive, lost in his own world. Confused, I pulled out my phone and sent him a text message, David, I'm here. At the food street. The moment the message sent, his body jerked. He straightened up, his head snapping up, his eyes widening, darting around wildly, searching, scanning the empty street as if he was desperately trying to find me, but couldn't see me. I waved again, more frantically this time, trying to catch his attention. Still nothing. He was looking right past me, through me, as if I wasn't even there. Sarah, he called out, his voice hoarse, strained, echoing in the unnerving silence. Sarah, is that you? Wait. Wait, I can almost see you. He fumbled in his pocket, pulling out a small, white porcelain bottle. My heart pounded in my chest. What was he doing? What was in that bottle? He uncorked the bottle, tilted his head back, and poured the contents directly into his eyes. My breath hitched. I gasped, recoiling instinctively, stepping back further into the shadows. What was he doing to himself? Was he trying to blind himself? Was this some kind of bizarre ritual? Some desperate act of, what? I watched, frozen in place, fear warring with morbid curiosity, as David squeezed his eyes shut for a moment, then slowly, cautiously, opened them again. This time, when he opened his eyes, he saw me. His face lit up, a wave of relief washing over his features. He broke into a wide, almost manic grin, and pushed himself to his feet, staggering towards me, his eyes fixed on mine, a mixture of joy and desperation in their depths. No. Stop. Don't come any closer. I cried out, instinctively backing away, fear overriding all other emotions. I retreated several steps, putting distance between us, putting a barrier between myself and his strange, unsettling behavior. David stopped, freezing in place about 5 meters away, his smile faltering, his expression shifting to confusion, then to a pained resignation. He stood there, motionless, staring at me, his eyes wide, unblinking. Then, his face shifted again, his expression morphing into something ecstatic. I see you, he exclaimed, his voice filled with a strange, manic joy. Sarah, I can finally see you. Your eyesight, I stammered, my voice trembling, is it really that bad? Do you need glasses or something? No, it's not my eyes, he said, shaking his head vehemently. You don't understand, Sarah. For 2 months, for 2 agonizing months, I've been trying to reach you, to see you. And now I finally know how. I finally figured it out. His words made no sense. He was rambling, incoherent, his eyes too bright, too intense. What was he talking about? David, I said, my voice low, cautious, we saw each other last night, remember? In my apartment? It's time, he said, ignoring my question, his voice taking on a somber, almost reverent tone. It's time to tell you the truth, Sarah. The real truth. Or Emily will get to you. She'll take you away. And then I'll lose you forever. He took a deep breath, his chest heaving, his eyes locking onto mine, holding me captive with their intensity. Sarah, he said, his voice low, almost a whisper, you've been dead for 2 months. The world tilted. The ground seemed to sway beneath my feet. His words hit me with the force of a physical blow, knocking the breath from my lungs, leaving me gasping for air. Dead? I whispered, my voice barely audible, disbelieving, denying, refusing to accept the impossible truth. What are you talking about? I'm not dead. I'm here. I'm alive. I can feel myself. I can feel the cold air, the ground beneath my feet. Every night, David continued, his voice unwavering, relentless, pushing past my denials, forcing me to confront the unthinkable. Every night, from midnight until dawn, you appear. You're here. But you don't remember. You don't remember what happened. You don't remember that you're not alive anymore. He went on, his words painting a horrifying picture, a distorted reality that twisted everything I thought I knew, everything I believed to be true. He told me about Emily, about our plan to go shopping, about the taxi, about the car crash. He told me Emily had died instantly at the scene. He told me I'd been rushed to the hospital, that doctors had fought for hours to save me, but in vain. He told me I'd died 3 hours later, in the sterile, brightly lit emergency room, surrounded by strangers, alone in my final moments. Fragments of memory, hazy and disjointed, flickered in my mind, like broken shards of glass reflecting a distorted reality. The snoring. The smart speaker. The elevator. The police. The deserted food street. It all clicked into place, suddenly making a terrifying, sickening kind of sense. The snoring wasn't a phantom sound. It was a real snore. A human snore. David's snore. The smart speaker wasn't malfunctioning. Someone was playing a game with it. Someone human. David. The elevator wasn't haunted. It was just crowded with living, breathing people. People I couldn't see. The police had arrived at the complex. The security guard was at his post. The food street was bustling, alive with activity. I just couldn't see them. Because I was. But I saw people, I stammered, my voice still clinging to denial, desperate for a loophole, a way out of this nightmare. In the elevator, on the 9th floor. I saw a woman, a man, they were real. I saw them. Yes, David said, his voice gentler now, understanding, compassionate. You can see some people. The master, the Buddhist monk I consulted. He said ghosts can see 2 kinds of people. Those with purine energy, those born on certain dates, under certain stars. And those who are close to death, those whose young energy is depleted by illness. He gestured to his own face, his pale, gaunt features, his bloodshot eyes. Look at me, Sarah. Look how sick I am. I haven't slept, I haven't eaten properly, I've been pushing myself to the brink, weakening myself, making myself sick, just so I could see you. Just so I could talk to you. Just so I could try to save you. Looking at his ravaged face, at the sheer desperation in his eyes, a cold certainty settled over me. He wasn't lying. He couldn't be. No one could fake this level of despair, this raw, unfiltered grief. And the porcelain bottle. The liquid he'd poured into his eyes. The bottle, I whispered, my voice barely audible. What was in the bottle? Ox tears, David said, his voice low, reverent. The monk gave them to me. He said if I used ox tears, I could temporarily open my yin-yang eyes. I could see ghosts. Ox tears. Yin-yang eyes. Ghosts. It was all so surreal, so unbelievable, yet looking at David, looking at the evidence, the pieces were starting to fit together, forming a terrifying, undeniable picture. And Emily, I said, my voice trembling. You said Emily was trying to hurt me. Why? Why would Emily want to hurt me? David sighed, a long, weary sigh that seemed to carry the weight of the world. For 2 months, Sarah, he said, his voice barely a whisper, every night, I've been fighting her. Fighting Emily, to keep you safe. He explained that Emily, like me, had initially been unaware of her death, trapped in a nightly cycle of amnesia. But after 7 days, something had changed. Somehow, Emily had broken free of the cycle, regained her memories. Realized her true state. But instead of seeking peace, seeking reincarnation, Emily had clung to the earthly realm, refusing to move on. She was lonely, lost, and she wanted company. She wanted me to stay with her. Forever. David believed that reincarnation was the best path for a ghost, the natural order of things. He believed Emily was wrong, selfish, even malevolent, for trying to keep me tethered to this world. And so, every night, he had fought her, subtly, indirectly, trying to steer me away from her influence, trying to protect me from her grasp. For the first month, he explained, I had instinctively trusted him, blindly followed his guidance. But then, Emily had learned to manipulate my emotions, to exploit my lingering feelings for her, to sow seeds of doubt and suspicion about David. She had almost succeeded in luring me away, in convincing me to join her in her ghostly existence. And that's when David had resorted to his last resort, his desperate gamble, emotion. He had reminded me of our love, of our past, of the warmth and tenderness we had shared. He had used our shared memories as a weapon, a shield, a lifeline, hoping to break through Emily's influence, hoping to win back my trust, hoping to save me from her clutches. But why? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Why didn't you just let me go? Why didn't you let me reincarnate in the first place? If it's the best thing for ghosts, why did you fight so hard to keep me here, in this purgatory? David's eyes filled with tears, his voice cracking with emotion. Because, he whispered, his voice thick with grief, because I didn't want to lose you, Sarah. I couldn't bear to let you go. Not yet. Not ever. But Emily was getting stronger, her manipulations more insidious, her influence over me growing with each passing night. David knew he was losing the fight. He knew he couldn't keep me tethered to this world forever. And so, he had made the agonizing decision to let me go. To help me. To guide me towards reincarnation, towards peace, even if it meant losing me forever. He had sought out the Buddhist monk, desperate for guidance, desperate for a way to say goodbye, to have one last moment with me before I moved on. The monk had given him the ox tears, the porcelain bottle, the key to opening his yin-yang eyes, the ability to see me, to speak to me, one last time. As he finished his story, David began to tremble, his entire body shaking, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He slowly, hesitantly, reached out towards me. I didn't flinch. I didn't pull away. I stood there, frozen, mesmerized, as he reached out and gently, tentatively, wrapped his arms around me. His body was burning hot, radiating an almost feverish heat. He pulled me close, holding me tight, his body trembling against mine. Even through my thin nightgown, I could feel the intensity of his heat, the almost unbearable temperature of his skin. It was like being embraced by a furnace. Even for a fever, this was extreme. This was unnatural. And then, it hit me. The chilling, undeniable truth. His body was hot. Burning hot. Because my body was cold. Ice cold. Colder than a corpse. Because I was a corpse. Because I was dead. And his feverish heat was just a desperate attempt to bridge the gap, to warm my ghostly chill, to feel my presence, to hold me close, one last time, before I faded away forever. The weight of reality crashed down upon me, crushing me, suffocating me. I was dead. I was a ghost. And the man holding me, the man I loved, was alive, desperately clinging to a phantom, to a memory, to a love that existed only in the past, in the realm of the living. Tears streamed down my face, hot tears mingling with the icy chill of my spectral form. I was dead. But I was also loved. Loved so fiercely, so desperately, that a living man was willing to make himself sick, to endure unimaginable pain, just to see me, to speak to me, to say goodbye. We stood there, locked in an embrace, for a long, timeless moment, two souls separated by the veil of life and death, bound together by an unbreakable thread of love. Then, slowly, reluctantly, David pulled away, his eyes red-rimmed, his face streaked with tears, his body trembling with exhaustion and grief. He pulled out his phone, his hand shaking so violently he could barely hold it steady. He glanced at the screen, then looked up at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow and urgency. "It's 4 o'clock, Sarah," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "Just 1 hour left. In an hour, you'll forget everything. You'll be trapped in the cycle again. We don't have much time left." What do you mean?" I stammered, my voice barely audible, still reeling from the shock of his revelations, from the crushing weight of my own mortality. "It's time," David said, his voice firm, resolute, despite the tears streaming down his face. "It's time for me to let you go. It's time. For you too. To find peace. To find your way back to the cycle of life. I'm going to take you there. Now. We don't have much time left." I looked at him, at his ravaged face, at the unwavering resolve in his eyes. And for the first time that night, I felt a sense of peace, a sense of acceptance. He was right. It was time. Time to let go. Time to move on. Time to find my way back to the light. Slowly, I nodded. "Okay," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Okay, let's go." David led me to his car, his hand gently guiding me, his touch sending a strange mix of comfort and sorrow through my spectral form. The drive was silent, punctuated only by the soft sobs that escaped David's lips and the rhythmic thumping of my own spectral heart. 40 minutes later, we arrived at a desolate spot on the western outskirts of the city. David parked the car at the edge of a steep, rocky cliff, the wind whipping around us, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. "Where are we?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper, my heart pounding in my chest, a mixture of fear and anticipation churning within me. "The monk said," David said, his voice low, reverent, he said this is a gateway. A place where the veil between worlds is thin. He said if you jump from this cliff, you can find your way to the underworld. To reincarnation. I nodded, my throat tight, tears welling up in my eyes again. I looked at David, at the man I loved, the man who had fought so hard. To protect me, to save me, even from myself. My heart ached with a bittersweet mixture of love and sorrow, of gratitude and regret. "Goodbye, David," I whispered, my voice breaking. "Thank you." Tears streamed down David's face, mingling with the ox tears still clinging to his lashes. "Go," he choked out, his voice thick with emotion. "Hurry, Sarah. Please. Time is running out. It's almost 5. I turned away from him, my heart heavy, my steps leaden, and walked towards the edge of the cliff. The wind whipped at my nightgown, tugging at my spectral form, pulling me towards the abyss. I looked down. The cliff face plunged into darkness, a dizzying drop into an unseen abyss. Blackness swallowed everything below, a void, a nothingness, a gateway to the unknown. I hesitated, a sudden wave of fear washing over me, cold and sharp. Was this real? Was this the right thing to do? Was I really about to jump off a cliff into the darkness, into the unknown? Turning back, I wanted to say one last thing to David. I wanted to tell him I love you, to express the depth of my gratitude, the immensity of my sorrow. But as I turned, my words died in my throat. My blood ran cold. My heart stopped beating. David was smiling. A slow, chilling, utterly wrong smile. He was standing beside his car, the car angled towards the cliff edge, headlights blazing, illuminating the abyss, illuminating me. And then, it hit me. The insurance policy. He'd burned the contract, yes, but his friend was an insurance agent. A new contract could be printed, backdated, signed, stamped, no questions asked. Or maybe the contract wasn't even necessary. Maybe all he needed was proof of purchase, a receipt, a record in the insurance company's system. And he had that. He had proof of the policy. He had the motive. He had the money. And then, the car. The car angled towards the cliff. The headlights illuminating the abyss. Illuminating me. The car's dashcam. Recording everything. Recording my final moments. Recording my suicide. A wave of icy dread washed over me, so profound it almost paralyzed me. He wasn't trying to help me. He wasn't trying to save me from Emily. He was trying to kill me. He was trying to push me off this cliff. He was trying to make it look like a suicide. He was trying to collect the insurance money. And Emily. Emily wasn't the villain. Emily wasn't trying to hurt me. Emily was trying to warn me. Emily was trying to save me. From him. What's wrong? David asked, his voice deceptively gentle, his smile widening, becoming more chilling, more predatory. Why aren't you jumping, Sarah? Time is running out. I stared at him, my voice cold, hard, devoid of emotion. Am I a ghost, David? Or am I alive? I watched his face, every subtle shift of expression, every twitch of muscle, searching for a flicker of guilt, a hint of deception, a crack in his carefully constructed facade. But his smile didn't waver. His eyes remained soft, gentle, filled with what seemed like genuine concern. I know it's hard to accept, Sarah, he said, his voice soothing, almost hypnotic. It's okay. We have time. You don't have to jump tonight. Come back tomorrow. I'll be here. We can talk more. I'll help you understand. I'll help you accept the truth. He wasn't panicking. He wasn't denying it. He was calmly, confidently, continuing his lie. He was so sure of himself, so convinced of his own cleverness, so utterly devoid of remorse. And that, more than anything, confirmed my deepest, darkest fears. He was lying. He was trying to kill me. And he thought he was going to get away with it. Then, I remembered Emily. Her warnings. Her desperate pleas. Her chilling message, don't trust David. He's going to kill you. My hand trembled as I pulled out my phone again, my fingers flying across the screen, dialing Emily's number. David's smile faltered. A flicker of something, surprise? Annoyance? Crossed his face. But he didn't try to stop me. He just watched, his smile fading, his eyes narrowing, a predatory glint replacing the feigned tenderness. Emily, I said, my voice loud, clear, defiant, I'm going to Emily's now. Right now. The reaction was instant. A chilling, inhuman laugh echoed from the phone, a sound that sent shivers down my spine, a sound that was definitely not Emily's voice. Too late, Sarah, the voice hissed, distorted, malevolent, it's almost 5 o'clock. You're out of time. You always trust David, don't you? Foolish girl. Why would you want to go to Emily? Why not stay with me? We can be ghosts together, Sarah. We can haunt this world together. Forever. You're lying. I screamed, my voice raw with anger, with revulsion, with a terrifying certainty. You're not Emily. You're a liar. You're trying to trick me. You're trying to kill me. Trick you? The voice cackled, the sound echoing in the pre-dawn air. What does it matter? You'll forget everything tomorrow anyway. You'll be back in the loop. And I'll be here. Waiting. To trick you again. And again. And again. No. I shouted, my voice ringing out across the desolate cliff top. You won't. I'm not going to forget. I'm not going to die. I'm not going to let you win. I took a step back, away from the cliff edge, away from David, away from the darkness, away from the lies. I'm going to live. Too late, the voice shrieked, laced with fury, with desperation. It's almost 5 o'clock. You're out of time. You're mine now, Sarah. You're mine. the line went dead. Silence descended again, heavy, suffocating, broken only by the wind whistling through the trees and the frantic pounding of my own heart. I looked at my phone screen. 5:01 a.m. 5 past 5. The deadline. The amnesia. It should have kicked in by now. I should have forgotten everything. I should have been trapped in the cycle again. But I wasn't. I was still here. I still remembered everything. The snoring, the speaker, the elevator, the police, David's lies, Emily's warnings, the cliff, the car, the insurance policy, the ox tears, the chilling smile, the voice on the phone. Everything. Every terrifying detail. Every horrifying revelation. It was all still there, etched into my mind, burned into my soul. David. His lie. His final, desperate, fatal lie. He'd lied about the time. He'd lied about the amnesia. He'd lied about everything. He'd been trying to trick me, to manipulate me, to push me over the edge, to kill me. And he'd almost succeeded. Rage, cold and pure, surged through me, banishing the last vestiges of fear, replacing it with a fierce, burning determination. He wasn't going to get away with it. He wasn't going to win. You liar! I screamed, my voice raw with fury. You absolute liar! Then, I turned and ran. Ran as fast as my legs could carry me, away from the cliff edge, away from David, away from the darkness, towards the faint glimmer of dawn breaking on the horizon. You tricked me! David roared, his voice laced with rage and disbelief. You tricked me too. You're still alive. You're still human. He lunged after me, his footsteps pounding on the rocky ground, his breath rasping in his throat, a desperate, enraged animal pursuing its prey. He was going to push me. He was going to force me over the edge. He was going to kill me. Even without the dashcam, even without the suicide narrative, he was going to kill me. And he was going to get away with it. I screamed for help, my voice raw, desperate, echoing in the pre-dawn air, hoping against hope that someone, somewhere, would hear me, would respond, would save me. David was gaining on me, his footsteps pounding closer, his shadow stretching out behind him, reaching for me, engulfing me. I could feel his breath on my neck, his hand reaching out, grasping, clawing, trying to push me towards the abyss. My foot slipped, teetering on the edge of the cliff, the cold, empty air yawning beneath me. I was losing my balance, losing my footing, losing hope. But then, a voice, a human voice, a voice of salvation, cut through the darkness, through my terror, through David's enraged pursuit. Hey! What's going on there? Hey! Someone had heard me. Someone was coming. Salvation. A glimmer of hope in the abyss of despair. But David, hearing the approaching footsteps, realizing his plan was collapsing, his chance slipping away, became even more frantic, more desperate. He lunged again, his hands reaching for me, his body pushing against mine, trying to force me over the edge, to end it all, to silence my screams, to escape the consequences of his monstrous act. But he had forgotten something. He had forgotten that I wasn't just a helpless victim. He had forgotten that I was strong. He had forgotten that I had trained, that I had practiced, that I knew how to defend myself. He had forgotten that I had taken yoga for 6 months. In a flash of instinct, of adrenaline-fueled desperation, of long-dormant muscle memory, I twisted my body, pivoting on my heel, using his own momentum against him. He lunged forward, expecting resistance, expecting me to fight back, expecting me to push against him. But instead, I stepped aside, letting his momentum carry him forward, into empty air. He stumbled, his eyes widening in shock, in disbelief, in dawning horror. He flailed his arms, grasping at empty air, trying to regain his balance, to pull himself back from the brink. But it was too late. His weight shifted, his center of gravity tipped, and with a strangled cry, he plunged forward, into the abyss. Then, silence. A heavy, profound silence, broken only by the wind whistling through the trees and the faint, distant sound of sirens approaching. Dawn broke. The first rays of sunlight painted the sky with streaks of pink and gold, chasing away the darkness, banishing the shadows, illuminating the desolate cliff top, revealing the stark reality of the night's horrors. His body was found at the base of the cliff, broken and lifeless. The police arrived, sirens wailing, lights flashing, breaking the eerie silence, shattering the fragile peace. They questioned me, their faces grim, their voices serious, their eyes searching, probing, trying to piece together the fragments of the night's events. I told them everything. Every terrifying detail. The snoring, the speaker, the elevator, Emily's warnings, David's lies, the cliff, the car, the ox tears, the chilling smile, the voice on the phone, the frantic chase, the desperate struggle, the final, fatal plunge. I held nothing back. I laid bare my soul, my fear, my trauma, my relief. And the stranger, the man who had heard my screams, who had rushed to my rescue, who had witnessed David's final, fatal fall, corroborated my story. He had arrived just in time. He had seen David plummet over the edge, he had seen me standing there, shaken, terrified, but alive. He was my witness. He was my savior. He was my proof. The charade was over. The nightmare was finally, mercifully, finished. I was free. I was alive. I was finally, truly, going to live. Bonus chapter. Stepping out of the police station, blinking in the sudden brightness of the morning sun, I saw him. The stranger. The man who had saved me. He was waiting for me, leaning against a lamppost, his face etched with concern, his eyes filled with a quiet, steady strength. As I walked towards him, a hesitant smile touched his lips. He straightened up, his gaze locking onto mine, a silent question in his eyes. A few steps away, he reached out, his hand gently cupping my cheek, his fingers brushing against my skin, a warm, reassuring touch that chased away the last vestiges of the night's chill. Then, he leaned in, his lips brushing against my forehead, a soft, tender kiss that sealed a silent promise, a shared understanding, a bond forged in the crucible of terror and survival. Yes. We knew each other. More than just strangers. More than just rescuer and rescued. We were already lovers. Already a couple. I had known about David and Emily for a long time. I had seen the subtle signs, the furtive glances, the hushed whispers, the secret smiles. I had known they were together, that they were plotting something, that they wanted me out of the picture. And I knew why. The insurance money. So, I had played along. I had pretended to be oblivious, to be trusting, to be vulnerable. I had let them believe they were in control. But I was the one pulling the strings. I was the one orchestrating the final act. Yes, the truth was, I had deliberately avoided the dashcam's view. I had planned it all. With the help of this stranger, my lover, my partner in this deadly game, we had lured David to the cliff top. We had played on his greed, his arrogance, his desperation. We had played him like a fiddle. And in the end, we had pushed him over the edge. Together. Back home, in the quiet solitude of my apartment, the ghosts of the night finally vanished, the echoes of terror finally silenced, I retrieved the insurance policy. Not the insurance policy, but an insurance policy. Because there were two. 6 months ago, David, in his misguided attempt to help his struggling insurance agent friend, had taken out not one, but 2 policies. One policy insured me, with David as the beneficiary. The one he had burned, the one he had pretended to destroy to prove his innocence. A clever, but ultimately futile, deception. The other policy insured David. And the beneficiary? Me. The end.